Johnny, next time you have to introduce me in English, not in Italian, that I know that I have to come on stage. So good morning, everybody. That's a great room, even fully packed. Excellent. In case you haven't understand all the Italian, what Johnny just said, I will try to re-explain some of his points in proper German English. So we just really want to make sure that you really get our message. I'm truly happy to be here, and I truly am happy to be here because I think I found a new customer this morning. I got a new lead because Air Dolomiti had, for some reason, computer problems, and we got, again, pushed back and were delayed by over an hour. So I just got here at 10 o'clock, but finally I made it. So great to see such a great crowd here. And I hope I can, on one side, really repeat a few points what Johnny touched on, but also give you some other perspectives, what's going on in the market and how we see this from a REDHAT perspective, and give you some insights. The first slide, I don't go into the details because Johnny already explained this, okay? But I want to stress the point, and actually I learned a new word in the US. They now already talk about companies getting Uberized. Saying this again, you know the company Uber, the taxi company, which does not own a taxi, and there's now a new word, where companies are getting Uberized, which pretty much means they're getting disrupted by somebody coming into their industry who never ever have been in this industry, they never ever thought of, okay? Means if you don't have an agenda to address these points, you will be in trouble sooner or later because digitization is catching everybody. Gartner did a very interesting study where they now analyzed, and they're predicting that by 2020, just in 5 years, that's not far out in the future, 41% of the revenue which is generated by the companies is contributed to be generated through digital business. 41%, getting close to half of the business, or more than 2/3 of the business, driven from digital business. Think about it, how much you have today and how much you have to do internally from an IT perspective to get there. And if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. And you potentially get Uberized. So you truly have to get your act together and get geared up because you don't want to be disrupted. And when we talk about digital business, what is actually digital business in the end? IT becomes the differentiator. In most cases, IT is becoming the business or the business, okay? So it's not anymore that, like we said with Airbnb or with Uber and all the other companies where suddenly they don't own hotels, they don't own taxis, software is the business, IT is becoming the business. And the value is truly derived from speed and agility. It's all about getting new functionality faster to your customers, okay? It's all about speed and agility, and obviously it's best realized through new types of applications. That's the best way on realizing this. So putting this into a different picture, it's this graph. On one side, you have this huge demand which gets pounded or gets put on IT. The business is asking every single day for new functionality, and they want to have more things from you on a constant basis. So the demand on IT and the demand for innovation keeps growing. It actually keeps growing exponentially pretty soon, okay? Because it accelerates every single day. At the same time, you have to keep the lights on. You're sitting on your existing infrastructure. You cannot just throw it away. So your existing infrastructure is very, very often just not capable of coping with this demand, okay? So you don't have enough time. So what happens? The gap between this increasing demand and this declining capabilities of your existing infrastructure creates a huge innovation gap. And if you don't address this innovation gap, you will get Uberized sooner or later. Okay, and I will touch a little bit on how to best approach this innovation gap. So other companies talk about we are in the middle of a big IT transformation. Doesn't sound really scary, an IT transformation, because we have been through many IT transformations before. Some of the people here in the room, not everybody, but at least some, went from mainframe to client server. And many went from the client server into the internet world. And now we're going into the next paradigm shift, going to the cloud world. That's not so scary. But there's two fundamental differences to the prior IT transformations we lived through. The first one is speed. It's happening at. There I could also say, it's okay, I just do things a little bit faster. But the second one, which is the real difference, is the disruptive effect on the business. Because you suddenly have new companies coming into your industry you never have thought of. Banks are not just anymore just competing with banks. UniCredit is not just competing with whatever, Banca Popolare or whoever, okay? They are now starting to compete with PayPal and others. Volkswagen, Daimler, you know, and so on, Fiat, you know, they're competing not just with each other, they're competing with Google and with Apple, okay? So it's complete different competitors coming into your space. So the disruptive effect is the big difference in this new IT transformation which we are now going through. So let me walk you through a little bit through the evolution of the technology. We know all how it started. We all started with classic, you know, physical, you know, servers and physical, you know, architectures. Then we transitioned over into a virtual world, you know, where VMware took all the market there on the classic, you know, traditional virtualization. Then we went into private clouds and into public clouds. What is very important here is these four footprints, as we call it, you know, exist today, and they will exist for many years to come. Physical servers and traditional virtualized workloads will not just go away tomorrow. I'm absolutely convinced they will stay around these four footprints for decades, okay? So we have to cope with all these different footprints. The difference between companies will be what is the share mix between these different footprints, okay? And maybe a company like Netflix, as one example, are the extreme, you know, they are just in a public cloud. But there are just very, very few companies. The absolutely vast majority lives in all four footprints with just different share mixes, okay? And this share mix probably will transition from one world to the other, but they all will exist for many, many, many years to come. Very important point. When you then look at the development side, on the application side, you know, the same way as we went from physical to virtual to private to public cloud, on the application side, we went from classic monolithic applications to really connected applications, to web architected applications, and nowadays to truly microservice architected applications. Guess what? The same as with the architectural footprints. These different type of applications will also be around for many years to come. The monolithic big applications, maybe from an insurance company which already is around for 30 years, most likely will be around for the next 30 years, okay? Will I develop a brand new application in this monolithic style? Most likely not. There I will develop in probably a microservice architecture. But again, very important, these four different, you know, application architectures will also exist, you know, going forward. And now if you combine this, where you have now these four different footprints, you have these four different, you know, kind of application architectures, we are all kind of in IT, you can do the math, you have quite a lot of combinations. You have like 16 potential different combinations, which becomes a nightmare if you need to manage this, you know, and kind of keep this up every single day. Maybe not every single combination really makes sense, but many combinations are not just theoretical possible, they are in real life possible. So how do you best solve this problem to really, you know, live in this world, you know, and kind of get there some efficiency, because otherwise you will never close your innovation gap. And that's where now container technology is, I don't want to say it's the silver bullet, as the Americans say, but it is a great piece of technology, you know, which can help significantly solving this problem, okay? And containerization is becoming extremely, extremely, not just trendy, it's become reality in companies. Who's already kind of experimenting or using containers in this room here? Please, quickly a hand. There's already a few. I can guarantee you, if I would have asked this question a year ago, there would be close to no hands. And if I would ask this question in a year from today, I would say at least half the room will put up the hands, or maybe even more, okay? Because this is happening because containers will bring us so much new functionality. Because containers are now getting used out of three main reasons. First, you can containerize existing applications. What does this mean? You don't have to rewrite an existing application, but you can kind of put a wrapper around the application and put the application kind of in a container. It's maybe not microservice architected, which is okay, but you have it in a format, in a container format, where you can run it on a consistent platform. So very important, containerization is not just for brand new applications. That's why we at Red Hat put a huge focus on putting state also into the container, because all the existing applications are stateful applications, so they need storage and so on, persistent storage. And some of the newer platforms as a service, they don't allow for state, because in the modern architected microservice application architecture, you don't need state, okay, because they're all stateless kind of applications, and you can just throw away a container if you lose it. But we put a lot of effort in putting state into the container, in the technology, so that you can take an existing application and also put it into a container, no matter if it's a monolithic or already connected, web architected, or microservice architecture. And then your container platform, which is now important, can run actually on these 4 different footprints. It can run on physical, on virtualized, on private, or on public cloud environments, okay? When you kind of put this into perspective, that you now can even take your existing, speaking in Gartner terms, mode 1 applications, at the same time taking your mode 2 world and kind of put this into the same environment and have the flexibility to run this in different environments, you have kind of all the good things together, and which gives you time then to truly start to innovate and help accelerating your business by delivering new functionality faster. So from a Red Hat perspective, we first there developed something which we called a Red Hat Atomic Enterprise Platform, which is the container optimized operating system. It's the same basis as Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but it's optimized for pure container workloads. Okay, so that was the first step what we're doing, and that's kind of becomes your runtime environment for your containerized applications. If then on top of it, you also want to kind of develop the applications and run them truly on a platform as a service, with even more flexibility from automatically scaling it out and so on, then you need a platform as a service where from a Red Hat perspective, we have an offering called OpenShift, which gives you exactly this functionality where you have all your containers in your platform, and it can run on your, at the end, Red Hat Enterprise Linux infrastructure. So very, very, very powerful combination. So when you put this into quickly one picture from the history, we said we started, with a classic, development process, agile, from waterfall over agile to DevOps, then the application architectures as explained, now microservices, and then going to containers and cloud. When you look at the 4 main topics which is happening today with DevOps, microservice, containers, and cloud, where is this happening? Where are the technologies in these spaces getting innovated? Most of them are getting innovated in open source communities. Gianni already, touched briefly on it. When we talk about, cloud, we're talking about OpenStack. If you talk about containers, we're talking about Docker or Kubernetes, or Jenkins for, the continuous development and so on. So all the innovation in these new hot topics is happening in open source communities. Today's problems are just too big to be solved by a single technology provider. The problems are just too big. That's why also all the big guys, including IBM, including Cisco, including HP, and I could name all of them, are participating in these open source communities. But also many of the new players like Google and Facebook and Yahoo and LinkedIn, all of these guys are also active contributors in these communities. And Uber and Airbnb, they're all in these communities, because the problems are just too big to be solved by a single, supplier. These days are over, okay? And we as Red Hat, that's part of our DNA. We are like living this every single day, and I will touch on it a little further. Before I go there, give you a few statistics from a recent research from Black Duck, where they always make every year a kind of an open source, study. The first one says 8 out of 10 are choosing open source based on quality jumped from the 5th from the prior year, so it's okay. The second one is 50% of all enterprises are expected to contribute or adopt open source. They want to stress the point, contribute. That's exactly what we are seeing, that more and more customers are contributing also code and work with us and with the other partners in these open source communities. Let me quickly ask you a hand. Who is already who is already contributing to open source communities as part of the company? Yeah, not too many here. Hopefully this will be coming more. Because what we're clearly seeing, that's the last bullet, that when asked why companies engage with open source communities, the number 2 answer was attract and retain top talent. And I'm hearing this more and more and more. If you want to attract top talent, you will not get this if they are not allowed to work in open source communities as part of the company. They don't want to just work in these open source communities with their private email address. Okay? They want to work in there as part of the company. If you don't offer this, you will not get the top talent. Okay? And you need the top talent. Gartner did also an interesting analysis. They were analyzing of all the digital business in the future, all the applications you need for this. Like I said, 41% of the revenue will come from digital business in just 5 years. All the applications and the software you need for it, 75% of it will be built, not purchased. Meaning not buying off-the-shelf software. It will be built in-house. So everything is super highly customized software. So that's why you see also such a high demand for developers. And people are not anymore using developers just offshoring in India or in China or wherever. They want to have the developers as close to the business as possible. Because you need to get dev and operations and the business together. Okay? So that's why the application is king and the developers come closer. So think about this and take this serious, because I'm hearing this from more and more companies saying, I'm not able to attract talent. The third bullet clearly is a reason. So you have to allow people to work in these open source communities and take advantage of it. Okay, we have great examples. Amadeus, one of our flagship accounts when it comes to platform as a service, the airline reservation system. They decided for OpenShift as their strategic platform, especially for running their new business in the hotel reservation systems, which they're now expanding into. And they have 10 dedicated people at Amadeus working jointly with us in the communities to help advancing the features which are important to them. The same as we have with whatever Banco Santander or BBVA in Spain, 2 Spanish banks, actively contributing also in the OpenShift community and in our cloud management communities to advance features which are also important for them and to attract the right talent and make sure their talent also knows how to work in open source communities. Okay, very, very important point. Based on all of this, everything we do as a company, as Red Hat, all our products are developed in these open source communities, 100%. When we make acquisitions which are closed source, we just go through the process of analyzing the code and checking the licenses and so on, and then we open source it. Okay? We have done just recent examples. Our mobility acquisition, Feed Henry, was an Irish company, closed source. Now we created an open source project called Feed Henry. It's open source. We donated all the code. Okay? We spent like $100 million for an IP, which we then just open it and giving it back to the community. Think about this. We are so convinced about the model by sharing it and adding value in the community to drive the product forward. Because we are not selling the bits and the bytes. We are selling added value around the free technology. That's why we're so religious about it and develop all our applications, all our offerings the same way. Okay? And you can read the slides with all the different products. It's happening all the same way. It started with Linux, where we then had Fedora as our community distribution, and we did the same for all the other offerings, be it Origin for OpenShift, or be it Atomic for Atomic Enterprise, or ManageIQ for CloudForms, and so on. So let me give you a few numbers from a Red Hat perspective. We are already around for quite some time, already around since 93. Then we had IPO in 99 and so on. In the meantime, we are close to 8,000 people worldwide. We are 2,500 people just in EMEA. We are a public traded company. And we have presence, clearly worldwide presence here in Italy. We are in Milano, we are in Rome. But I think in all of Italy, Gianni, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have probably close to 100 people working for the Italian market already, just within Red Hat in EMEA, which is a significant number. And you see in the graph, in the history, started with Linux, added middleware, added virtualization, added storage, added cloud management, and so on. So we have a complete, now portfolio. Gianni touched on it, what we are doing from an offering perspective. I don't want to go into it. But what is very important for me to get across is we are not doing open source, or open source is not our business model. Very, very important. Open source is our production system of the software, meaning we develop software the open source way. Open source is not a business model. Okay? Our business model is a subscription business model where we're adding value to the free bits and bytes, to the open source technology. Okay? But everything we develop it the open source way by developing in these communities. We have over 3,000 developers in our, employed by Red Hat. All of them, 100%, work in these open source communities. Not 99%, 100%. Okay? Very important. We used open source as a method to develop software, to produce better software. But the business model is we add value around the free technology by giving you certification, by giving you support, by giving you legal protection, long-term life cycles, and so on. And it actually worked quite well so far. And I'm pretty convinced it also will work also in the future. This is our track record of our revenue. I don't want to take any credit, but I started on the left side there on this chart with the company back in 2003. But what is a more impressive number? We have now delivered as a company 54 quarters in a row revenue growth. Quarter over quarter over quarter over quarter. And I could repeat this 54 times, which I will not do, without a single exception. Believe me, you do not get lucky 54 times. It's not just happening by accident. We must be doing something fundamentally right to keep growing 54 times in a row, especially considering that we do not have any lock-in. We are selling software which is based on open source technology, which is governed by open source licenses, and we're selling a subscription around it which adds value to it. If you don't like it, you don't have to renew. So we do not have lock-in. Despite this kind of disadvantage that we do not have lock-in, we deliver growth 54 quarters, which is 13 and a half years in a row, without a single exception. Just try to think about it. We must be doing something right, okay? Because otherwise customers would not renew on an ongoing basis and acquire more services and more products, from us. So I think they are pretty proud, and it's a good external confirmation. When you look at the verticals, we're actually not a vertical company in terms of that we have vertical solutions. Having said this, we have 4 verticals which account on a worldwide basis for roughly 50% of our business, which is telecommunication, financial services, tech media, and the public sector. This is different, obviously, from country to country, where I would say probably in Italy, kind of public sector has a relatively high share. Obviously, when you go into the UK, financial services has kind of a lion's share. If I go to the Nordics, then telecommunication has a big share with whatever Ericsson and Nokia being in this region. But overall, that's kind of our mix. But we don't have a vertical specific solution, and we see actually quite some traction now, especially around in the retail sector, in the oil and gas sector, with IoT use case scenarios. So it's really, at the end, vertical independent. Okay? My last slide from a kind of product perspective, what I want to show you is this what we call the CIO alternative slide. And if you wanted to, for sure you can get it. Where on the left side, you have all the different areas we are in, starting from the operating system down to mobility and everything which is in between. In the middle, you have all the incumbent players. If I will ask the question, are you using some of the software, then every single hand should go up. That's why I don't ask this, okay? But more important, on the right, there is an alternative from Red Hat for these different areas, okay? We are not just a Linux company. That's what we're known for. That's what many people see us. We are much, 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 much more, and we have many, many use cases and reference stories in all the different areas. So you're welcome to just ask Danilo or the local team here. If you want to get this slide, you absolutely can have it. So let's switch gears a little bit again to the picture. How do we close this innovation gap I showed you at the beginning? And we see the 3 different areas to close this. One is around you truly need to kind of get your IT infrastructure more efficient, which starts with infrastructure as a service. And there, OpenStack is becoming more and more the foundation for the cloud, especially for private cloud implementations. And there are 2 reasons why I'm saying or making this statement. Still the market data is not, it's still relatively new. There's not enough direct data available, but I have 2 data points where I base my kind of statement on. First one is the telecommunication industry is now in the whole process of also virtualizing the telco network, not the IT network, the telco network. And this whole topic is called like NFV, like network function virtualization. And the telco industry, more or less as a whole industry, decided that OpenStack is the technology which gets used for virtualizing the telco network, okay? They did not decide for VMware or something else. They decided for OpenStack as a technology, okay? It's a huge industry, you know, multi-billion, you know, dollars get spent there. So that's one important data point. The second one is VMware launched, I think now a year ago, their own version of OpenStack. Believe me, they are the absolute last ones who want to make a single dime on OpenStack, because they wanted to become the same leader in cloud as they are on virtualization. No question, they are the 800-pound gorilla with 85 or 90% market share on the traditional virtualization side, and they had hoped that they can use the same technologies, you know, and can use their power to become the same leading player in the cloud space. Not everybody had the same strategy, okay? Because IBM and HP and Cisco and Dell and Red Hat and NASA and Rackspace and many others thought it's not a good idea, okay? We rather need to support a different technology. And that's where OpenStack came in. Everybody rallied around OpenStack, and that's where we right now see that OpenStack is clearly winning the cloud space, okay? So that's kind of the two data points. So if you have not yet gotten involved with OpenStack, I would highly recommend it. Just the OpenStack Summit in Tokyo just finished. It was taking place last week, where every 6 months there's a big OpenStack Summit. And I think there was already like 6,000 or 7,000 people in Tokyo attending the OpenStack Summit. Next one, to close this, I touched on it, is everything around containers, okay? Where you have to get more efficient by getting existing applications into containers and develop new applications in a container architecture, ideally in a microservice, using microservice architecture, because at the end, it gives you much faster app delivery, gives you much faster deployment, gives you lower cost, at the end, and obviously gives you more efficiency. Putting this together in a kind of complete stack. So at the bottom, you have your infrastructure with with your OpenStack. On top of it, you need to run your platform, for your containers, which will become the REDHAT Enterprise Atomic platform, okay, RHEL Atomic. And if you also want to add the development side, the development part of it, a complete platform as a service, you put kind of OpenShift as platform as a service on top of it, okay? So it's a nice way to really also step it up. You can start from the beginning with everything, or you can also nicely, grow into this environment. Putting this into a different picture, just to show it differently, you start with the DevOps approach, which is very important, which is not a product. DevOps is truly getting a culture change, getting different processes into your organization by really living in agile methods, by truly bringing developers and operations people together, and even adding also business people to it. And then develop your applications in new architectures like mobility and microservices, putting them into containers and running them in the cloud, okay? Be it a private cloud or be it a public cloud, and managing it as a single pane of glass with one applications. And now to give for the same story, the last picture, which is more like the Gartner world, where I'm saying it's bimodal, where I say on one side, I have my mode 1, which is more the traditional world, where it's more about I want to modernize my IT, take cost out, make it more industrialized, where classic use case scenario is still Unix to Linux, or WebSphere or WebLogic to JBoss as classic use cases, where we fit very well, but at the same time, on the mode 2 side, with accelerating really your IT, where also, again, our applications play a very nice role. So we are convinced that this open hybrid cloud approach, and really using these different technologies can truly help you closing this innovation gap. We truly believe in this, and if you don't do this, remember the word, you may get Uberized, okay? So really stay there on your toes, and I can just finish with the same slide as Johnny, can just say the future has never been so open. Thank you very much for your attention.